So, Doug, I was reading your latest book, Miss Wyoming, and I was really interested in reading it because it dealt with Hollywood, which I thought was a really good angle for you to take, because it's something that everybody is kind of has completely on their minds all the time, the way the news media and entertainment media is. And have you ever had any offers to have any of your books made into movies? I'm sure that's be the craziest.
Oh, you know what? I've had, every single book has had offers. Some of them, sure, if you want to make it, great. I've never done the screenplay, and I've always stayed very disengaged from it. Probably the most interesting film project to date is with Steven Spielberg. He's doing this movie set in the year 2080, and rather than do just a generic, like, woo, the future, everything has that whole thing, he really wanted to make sure, well, he wanted to know what 2080 looks like. And, well, no one knows what it looks like. The moment you speculate in the future, you're ipso facto lying. But myself and a few other people were part of this futurist organization out of Emeryville in California. And so we brought in, and it was like 2 days, like this really intense, like, think-a-thon in a hotel in Santa Monica in a room. And I think they should be teaching futurology in elementary school. I think that basically everyone's a futurologist, and that you just kind of get it beaten out of you. But rather you should encourage kids. There should be like reading, writing, arithmetic, and tomorrow. And that was one thing that art school really taught me, is that artists tend to be from 1 to 50 years ahead of everyone else in terms of thinking. So that if I want to find out what tomorrow feels like, often I'll just look at Flash Art or Art Forum or the gallery in your work here. And, you know, I have to hand it to you. Your work still looks like tomorrow. It doesn't look like it's from today. And these two pieces here, they actually remind me of all these conversations I'm hearing lately about the perils of globalism or globalization. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's kind of a funny parallel, because lately there's been 1 or 2 books that have sort of come out addressing that. Like, I know Naomi Klein's book, No Logo, has hit big, and that's sort of a hot topic, as well as the incidents in Seattle have all really come to the fore. And I sort of got a weird feeling like, whoa, like, that stuff that I've been thinking about, and here it's sort of come working its way to center stage. So it's hard to say, I mean, globalization, it means so much, but where do you start? I think it's one vast question.
What I'm thinking about is, okay, the worst case scenario for globalization, and I mean this in a very dry academic sense, is Canada. Because here you have this nation that's, different from the States. We've been contiguous to them for what, 133 years now? And we have we don't even have a membrane between the two countries. Basically, it's entirely porous. And I always sort of laugh when people say, oh, we have to limit the number of
magazines.
It's like, are you crazy? I mean, for 100 years we've had nothing but American. We couldn't allow more magazines, and they're already here. Yet, in spite of all of this and all the TV stations and radio, a distinct Canadian identity has remained. And this is between two countries that basically speak the same language and have the same history.
And the same culture, basically.
And so, God, look at an island country like Japan or England, and we might, okay, I was in Tokyo in November. They've got the Gap there, let's face it. They've got Starbucks and all that too. But I don't think it's going to go too far.
Well, it's sort of like those debates. Like, in thinking a lot about advertising and reading a lot about it, you hear about, well, does advertising really affect people, or are they able to sort of fended off as just the sort of the white noise of that goes on during your day. And just like, and I sort of think that advertising does affect you, and it's sort of unavoidable. And then I looked at the debate about violence on TV affecting people's behavior. And I never thought, frankly, that violence affects people's behavior. So, you know, if you say advertising, if violence doesn't affect people at home because they're already violent, and it's just sort of after the fact, you know, because they blame TV for violence amongst youth and that sort of thing. And I mean, so maybe advertising doesn't affect cultures as heavily as you'd think.
There's this wonderful quote from The Simpsons where Bart and Lisa are watching an Itchy and Scratchy cartoon, and Marge Simpson says, "Oh my God, that's so violent." And Lisa says, "Well, Mom, how can we become desensitized to violence if we don't overexpose ourselves to it?" Even the term advertising, you know, seems slightly archaic. I think one of the shifts in the 90s is that advertising almost became like extinct now, and marketing replaced advertising. And now almost like global campaign has replaced marketing. And
yeah, you don't just have a print ad in Life now. You've got a whole army of marketers and people out there pushing in every cross-brand sort of thing that you can devise.
I'm a collage junkie. I have a whole room at home filled with old Fortunes and Looks and Life magazines from about 55 up to the present. And it's interesting to watch in the early 70s. You probably don't even know this, but Life magazine was out of business for about a decade. And watch the number of ads people put in these national campaigns dwindle down to nothing. The magazine died, and then it came back, and it's not what it used to be. So I think the nature and texture of advertising has shifted, altered, moved into like, it's like you drive along the freeway and like in this little tiny crack in the concrete by the Lonsdale overpass, a fern is growing. It's like the media is as insidious as ferns. And I'm getting really random here.
No.
But you know what, how many hours of TV have you watched in your life?
Quite a lot.
If you're like me, you've seen like 50, something pathetic, like 50,000 hours or something.
Insane amount, yeah.
But I never really dream in TV, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely.
And then I'll let you talk, because I'm really hogging the mic here.
No.
I have these water planters outside the front door of the house with, you know, lilies and stuff growing in them. The water was getting muddy, so I went out and got these little snails to clean up the pots, and they really do a good job. So I sat there for about 10 minutes watching the snails sort of move around. And then for the next month, I dreamt about snails. So there's something obviously very deep and primal and archetypal about snails. And yet, I never dream about TV. So fortunately, it does remain above a certain level.
Yeah, I'd like to think, you know, even the most, you know, average person has some ability to sort of to cut through it. I know I have a hard time just listening to advertising just sort of grates on me, and so I just have to hit the mute button on TV, and I don't know if that's just a personal quirk or if it's, you know, a hatred of advertising or what it is. So, but yeah, I mean, obviously globalization has its impact in the fact that industries, you know, create and they have impacts on the environment, and I mean, it certainly must have an influence on us in making us buy. I mean, it certainly has an impact. It must have an impact on the average person, just in the sort of the lust to make people want to buy stuff they don't need, you know. And obviously, people are buying because the corporations wouldn't be sort of doing what it is they're doing. You know, if nobody wanted the Flowbee hair cutter system or something, you know, on late night TV, then they wouldn't be making the ads for it. So I think globalization is certainly going to have an impact.
Okay, here's a hypothetical question. What would happen if advertising was banned, like the way it used to be in Soviet Union before the wall came down? Would our culture collapse?
I think it would go into the throes of feigning a collapse for, you know, a few years before it kind of reorganized itself and I mean, civilization in any respect is an entity that has to adapt, and I mean, that's a hard question to ask because it wouldn't, obviously it wouldn't ever happen. I guess that's not true. Like you say, in the Soviet Union, it did, so, but I think people will get used to it, as people age, as any, like I say, the way the human animal works, it adapts to whatever situation it's in. It's going to hurt the most to start with, but then I don't think we revert to, living on communes or being, or that sort of thing. It's hard. I'm not an expert in sociology, so I don't know what the real impact would be, but I'm sure people would be pretty angry.